Greetings, hoop heads, and welcome back to Jersey Jump Shot, the first and only podcast dedicated exclusively to college basketball in the Garden State. I'm Jerry Carino, alongside longtime Asbury Park Press colleague Steve Edelson. There's a lot to discuss this week, But first, we have a special guest. We're going to start with a co-captain from Seton Hall, which is playing much better of late, Prince Aligbe. Joins us. Prince is a Minnesota native who transferred to the Hall after 2 years at Boston College. The junior forward scored 16 points and played superb post defense in the Pirates' overtime win over DePaul, and then tallied 19 points and 7 boards in Saturday's highly entertaining shootout loss to Providence. Most important of all, Prince is a super nice guy. Prince, welcome to Jersey Jump Shot.
Hey, my pleasure to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
So I have a few background questions for you first. You're from Minneapolis?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Born and raised.
Are you named after the artist Prince? Isn't he from that area?
The amount of times I've got asked that question is I could own a mansion, a couple cars, a couple things, but no. So both of my parents, they're natives of Nigeria, and my dad, it's a nice story to him, me too, some in our family. Around the time when I was born, his mom had passed away, probably like a couple weeks before. And he had a dream a couple days before I was born about a nice, strong baby with a crown on his head. And, the night I was born, that's when Prince came about. So
that's a good story. I'm glad we added to the Prince Mansion Fund with that question. Sorry to be the millionth person. I'm also told that you play the piano. Is that true?
Yes, I do. It's another hobby of mine, another way to decompress, and it's just something I like. Been doing it for about 5 to 6 now.
So when you sit down at the piano, I don't know if do you have a keyboard in your apartment there or no?
Yes, I do.
When you sit down, what do you play? Are you like improvise? Is there certain music you like to play? Are we talking classical, jazz? What's going on when Prince sits down and tickles the ivory?
I would say it's definitely a lot of jazz, definitely a lot of R&B, especially like 90s stuff, early 2000s. Plus a lot of improv here. I'm self-taught, so it's just things, hearing a song, trying to learn on my own, being curious, and then adding my own taste to it. So
a self-taught piano player, and he likes the 90s. That's right in my wheelhouse. Steve might be more the 80s. I'm in the 90s.
Try 70s.
70s. Sorry, Steve. I tried to give you the benefit of the doubt. All right, Prince. We're gonna have to hear that at some point this season. I have one more question for you from Minneapolis. How cold does it actually get there?
I mean, we were talking about times where it's been like negative 20, and it feels like negative 30. The wind chill is crazy, but you get used to it. One day, when around November, like college basketball season always starts, in that first week of November. It's still like fall kind of in Minnesota, and no snow. And then once it hits like Thanksgiving, like the next week after that, you'll see an avalanche of snow, and that's when you've got to prepare for the long haul until really March. So it gets pretty cold, but I love it.
So you're having no problem right now in New Jersey, or when it's 55 degrees in the Prudential Center, you're good.
Yeah, it's surprising. Everybody's always has, extra long sleeves and stuff like that. Obviously, the cold is cold to anybody, but I'm, like you said, 5 minutes in there, I'm fine. So, yeah.
Hey, Prince, you played some ball with Chet Holmgren and Jalen Suggs, didn't you?
Yes,
what was that like, and how did that come about?
It was a great experience, and really to go on that, those guys are just like older brothers to me. Like once I first transferred here after spending the summer, I spent some weeks with them out in California doing some working now and just catching up, because obviously everyone's on busy schedules. They were at their respective teams and me being in college still. But these guys I've known since I was in about 3rd or 4th grade. I've been playing with them ever since, So learned a lot from them, about the nuances of the game. And ultimately, my end goal is to get to where they at. And we all support each other through various ways. If I talk about a game or a situation, I always go to those guys if need be, and they're always a text or a call away. So it helps.
You got some basketball royalty in the background there. Prince, what was your first encounter with Shaheen Holloway? What was your first impression of him?
I first heard his name, obviously, when they went on their little run in March Madness when he was at St. Peter's. It was a little bit inspiring. But I first had my first personal encounter with him was my freshman year at Boston College. We had a 2-year scrimmage deal with them. So it'd be throughout my freshman and sophomore year. And my freshman year, we played them. They came to us, the local gym, and we won. I had a good game. But just seeing how he coached, obviously, he has a very rugged style, but he just that's how he shows his passion for the game. And those guys played hard. They played Seton Hall high school, which I know now. And, that was just gritty. And I knew it was somewhere, like, as a coach, it's something I respected. So that was probably my first encounter.
What was your kind of welcome to Shah moment at Seton Hall when you arrived this summer?
It's probably me. But I would want to say my first welcome to Shah moment was probably in September. The summer went well. Obviously, he coaches the way he coached from the moment you meet him. But in September, when you start up those workouts, preseason workouts and much more, I seen the intensity go up. And there was one particular time I was just beginning a workout, trying to get into it, just finished stretching, trying to start. And he was on me for how I was moving. He thought I was slow, lazy. And he told me in obviously various different ways. But just seeing that, like, he is not that, he thinks that of that. I mean, he wants me to be better. And that's anytime I step on the floor that I should try to give it my all so I can get as much as I can, away from games. So that was probably the first moment.
So you're 4 games, into playing the Big East schedule. I know it's early yet, but what do you see as the biggest differences in style between the Big East and the ACC?
Definitely the physicality. The physicality is one. And definitely the competition, competitiveness. I was telling this to my teammates actually the other day, some of the guys that's new here too. I was like, it feels like every coach really preaches like toughness and grittiness over just like overall style of play, here in the Big East. And it showed, obviously the position I played too, playing the forward spot and also playing a little bit of small ball 5, holding down the paint, it can get hectic. And I'm not saying I run from it. I embrace it and I love it, but it's a new part of the game I experienced in my first 2 years, and to build on the competition part is really just on any given day, if you're last in the standings or top of it, you're always going to have a team that want to compete, whether you're home and away. And I just like the aspect because I think it brings the best out of everybody. And as a competitor myself, that's what I want. Someone that's challenging me and I could challenge them and see where it gets us.
At what point did you realize how good Isaiah Coleman could be?
I would definitely say it was during the summer. After we'd have workouts during the day, he would sometimes come back later, mid-afternoon or whatnot and have pickup. And he was housing some like injuries early on in the summer, but later on in the summer, there was one particular day he was just doing everything, scoring, getting to the rim, assisting, everything that he's doing now. And what stood out to me at that time was just like his overall, a little bit of versatility in his game and his agility, quickness. I was surprised, because he's someone that's 6'5", obviously really athletic, but it's just like how he can get from one place to another impressed me a lot. So
I got to go ahead. I'm sorry, Steve. Continue.
Yeah, man, I'm just curious, as a captain and kind of a leader of the team, what kind of advice have you been giving him?
I've been just telling him, keep what you're doing. And I know that sounds simple, but what I mean by that is like you set yourself up, to be held to a certain standard, being go-to guy when we need it in clutch moments and overall scorer. So don't run away from that. That's who you are. And obviously to use it to benefit the team. Obviously when people look at scores, in basketball, you could just think that they're for themselves. But we always tell Isaiah and us as a team, like, use it to benefit the team. Not saying he hasn't been. He's been doing a great job doing it, but it's just more so a reminder because he causes so much attention, and it helps all of us, and I think it has been as of recent too.
There's a question I get asked a lot this season. I can't answer it, but you can. What's it like having Gus as a teammate? Give me an example of Gus, the teammate. Fans are very curious about this.
Super energetic, especially like this last game. Obviously, I played a decent game, and so did a couple other guys. But having someone that's always giving you confidence and having shown joy in the game no matter what, that's like the embodiment of Gus. Obviously when fans see him enter the game, and he gets a lot of attention for it, but that is due. Like, he deserves that because he shows that to us when no one's looking. He's our fan. So that's really the kind of team he is.
What has kind of clicked for this team offensively over the last few games?
Obviously offense has been clicking. We're still Seton Hall, so defense is our thing. So obviously we're trying to find the balance, but I would say the biggest thing in clicking is just finding ways to move the ball. Emphasis on moving the ball, playing for another, driving and kicking, and under the movement. I feel like with certain lineups, it shows better than others, but that's the game of basketball. You're always going to have things that you're finding, and you're going to find ways you can get better throughout the season. I feel like that's what the teams that believe do. They get better throughout the season. So we've been finding, people that help each other. And like I said, obviously you win by scoring points, but at the end of the day, you also win championships by stopping people from scoring points themselves. So that's one thing.
Prince, you mentioned playing the small ball 5, and that small lineups worked pretty well. What's it like for you to go in there? How do you hold your own in the paint against these huge guys at your size? Not that you're small, but there's got to be a certain technique to it.
I would say it's just effort. Coach Shah, he's preaches to me, especially, like, he knows my ability. He's seen it. That's why I'm here, and he knows a big part of my game is just effort and passion. The more I'm playing with that and get lost game, the more impact I have. And really it's just been understanding college basketball, being a vet of understanding, okay, the flows and ebbs of a game. If this guy's going, how can I set more screens for him? How can I get him more open? Or if I see this big is playing me away or the team's switching, then maybe it's an opportunity for me to get into the post more myself or start attacking people with my speed, and athleticism. So it's just noticing little things like that, and then defensively just going with whatever the staff, telling me in the moment. Like I said, it's just having a willingness to do whatever it takes, whether they want me to get into coverage, edge everything, blitz, whatever the case may be, or switch everything. Just doing it with a high head and a willingness, because it's not like it's going to be perfect, but it's that counts. So.
All right, we know you got a workout to get to. I'm going to wrap this up with a question that we ask everybody who comes in from out of town, and that is, sure, compare the pizza in Boston to North Jersey, or the cuisine in general. Who's got the better pizza? Who's got the better food?
You're putting me on the spot here.
You can tell the truth. It's okay.
I would definitely say, to be honest with you, I need to try more of the full Jersey cuisine. I would say Jersey has better pizza. I've eaten a lot of pizza out here, but I think I can answer the cuisine question because, I spent 2 years in Boston and I ate a lot of different restaurants, met a lot of different people, and I feel like I want the same, here with Jersey. So maybe in a couple more months you could follow up this question again.
We'll get back to that. Maybe we'll have you on playing the piano and talking food. This is good. Prince Aligbe, you could hear why he's the captain of this team. He's playing well, and the Hall's playing better of late. And we thank you for coming on Jersey Jump Shot. Prince, we'll see you down the road.
Appreciate you guys. You guys have a good day.
Thanks a lot. You too. All right, Steve, that was fun. And I told you, as I said, Prince is good. Will be good in this format. He's a thoughtful guy.
Yeah, he was great. Yeah, really some great answers there.
You could see there's some leadership skills there too, which let's face it, every team needs, especially now when the rosters are changing so much. You need some leadership personalities in the room. We'll get back to the Hall in a minute, but I want to start our Around the Horn segment of this podcast episode by discussing Monmouth and specifically King Rice's comments about teamwork in the free agency portal NIL era. You know, he has this big man Doc who is playing really well and like finishing these pick and rolls and hard to stop. And King had said to you, and you wrote this and gained a lot of attention. They're like, I got to get my guards to pass this guy the ball to run the pick and roll instead of taking a shot they never make because they're trying to pad their stats for when free agency opens in the spring. That was like really, I think that comment hit home with a lot of people. That resonated beyond just Monmouth, right, Steve? Tell me a little bit about that, what you thought of that, and how that sort of came to the fore here.
Well, I think King, and particularly after a loss, is very much unfiltered. And just a lot of time in general, I think King says things that other coaches are thinking. And, this was a situation where he was frustrated. Monmouth had played well and lost to UNC Wilmington. And he just kind of spun into this answer where he talked about guys not throwing the ball to his big man in the post because they're trying to look for their opportunities later on, and really brought up the point that, it's tough for these guys to even get close together because they know next year it's going to be a whole new group of guys. It has really hurt team chemistry with a lot of guys. And I think his whole point was it's getting very tough. It's getting very tough for coaches, especially teams that are out of it, who may not have much to play for, to keep teams playing together as a team. And it's really going to push the concept of team here. And it'll be very interesting. I think that was his point.
Yeah, it was fascinating. And he said the other line that he said that was interesting, you quoted him on this, was when he said, like, all the coaches are talking about it. This isn't just me. And from what I can tell, he's right. Like, I have these conversations with coaches off the record. King, of course, he doesn't care. He's unfiltered. He goes on the record with it. But this is a widespread thing. And so there's two elements to this, really. And one is it's not great for team basketball, right? We're not seeing development. We're not seeing guys listening to coaching, playing for wins. Are people playing to win, or are they playing to pad a stat line? Like, that's an issue. Are we becoming AAU ball in college where people are just trying to pad their stat line and get highlights instead of trying to win games, right? That's the number one thing that King's addressing here, I think. But there's a second thing, Steve, and that is guys are not getting to know each other. They're not building bonds. They're not becoming friends with their teammates. Like, these are lifelong bonds you can build with a teammate in high school or college sports, and we're losing that. And that's the first part is sad for the fan and the coach and the school. The second part is sad for the player. Yeah. Like, you're missing out, right, Steve? That really struck me. What do you think of that whole angle?
Yeah, and I think that was a big part of what King was saying, and that was a big part of his quote was basically these guys can't get tight, and that was always the beauty of this game. He was saying was how we got to develop these guys over 3 and 4 years, and you got to see that, and now it's just not like that. And these guys are going to have new teammates, and they know it. And many of them are going to have new teammates other places. So I just think kind of that beauty of the game is being lost.
And the friendships, like we think of, like to use Rutgers as an example, we think of Geo Baker, Ron Harper Jr., and Caleb McConnell in the same sentence. Like, those three guys are going to be joined for life. As old men, they're going to come back together to Rutgers and be honored and be cheered, and that's their home, and and they'll be friends forever, and that they'll be at each other's weddings, they'll be at each other's families' events, we're losing that, and it's really sad. It's sad for the people, for the players, that this is lost. They don't know what they're going to be missing, Steve, and that really aches me, and I think that's a big part of. That's not necessarily, and I want to also mention, like, you can probably have NIL still and get these guys a share of the income and the revenue without having everybody transfer all over God's green earth. And that's where I think the open portal, the lifting of transfer restrictions has been the single biggest problem that's plaguing the sport and going to really hurt these young men toward their graduation and toward building these bonds for life.
Absolutely. I think it's a big issue. And in the case of King, I also think he was trying to send a message to his team in terms of, hey, we got to play as a team, not as individuals. And they responded Saturday with their biggest win since joining the CAA, beating Charleston, who's been the class of that league for a number of years now. So, I think King had other motives as well, and that kind of worked out for him as well.
Let's talk about that Charleston game, Stephen. What was the big thing there, and what was the crowd like? It sounds like it was pretty uproarious, and they had the home court feel in West Long Branch.
Yeah, Monmouth had won 15 straight at home, and UNC Wilmington broke that streak 2 nights earlier. So it was nice. They had a really enthusiastic crowd, good crowd, and I think that really helped energize the team. And I think, what you saw, the response to what King said, they had 17 assists, right? They were sharing the ball. The ball movement was great. When Doc was rolling, they were hitting them. And, listen, they dominated. They dominated Charleston in the second half. So, message delivered, really.
Nice piece of coaching, and nice to see players receptive to that message, right? And so that's a good thing. Speaking of coaching, I want to mention that FDU honored Tom Green, 407 wins over 26 seasons at the Knights helm, 4 NCAA tournaments, 4 conference regular season titles, 4 conference tournament titles, and 2 NITs, and just a great guy. And Steve, I wrote this story on Tom, and I talked to him for a while. What struck me the most is, listen, his resume speaks for itself. It was very good. But the way, dozens of former players called him, texted him, came back for the banner unveiling. It's going to hang in the rafters there in Hackensack with his name on it. The former players who came back, that's what has meant the most to him. He mentored these guys. He was in loco parentis, a father figure for these guys at a formative time in their lives. And most of these guys he had for 4 years. Occasionally you'd have a transfer back when, but mostly they came and they stayed. And so that bond stayed for life. And, it was nice for them to do that. It was long overdue. He very much deserved it. I know you've seen Tom and his teams play over the years, Steve. What do you think of that and that whole storyline?
I think it's great that they're honoring him. And I think people that follow New Jersey college basketball understand how good a coach he was. I remember those NEC days. Monmouth was in that league, and FDU was always right at the top of that league. Very competitive. Monmouth had a great rivalry with those guys. Those were good days of basketball.
He has the third most wins of any New Jersey men's Division I college basketball coach. The Hall of Famer Pete Carrill, of course, being one from Princeton, and then a guy by the name of Frank Hill, who coached in the old ball, leather ball era, Rutgers at Seton Hall at the same time, by the way. So that was totally different. You can almost throw that out. I know the guy was a great coach in the World War I and II era, but Tom I don't think we'll ever see that again. Now King's been at Monmouth, 13 years?
14th season.
This is his 14th. Mitch Henderson's, I think, one behind, 13 at Princeton. That's a long run in one place. Kevin Willard did 12 at Seton Hall before he went to Maryland. I don't think we're ever going to see 26, Steve. 26 years in one place?
No. Listen, that's just the nature of things. Over time, your message wears out and people get tired of you, and it's just time for everyone to move on. And so to have that kind of longevity is great.
It's nice when someone represents the institution so well for so long and becomes synonymous, right, with them, like Pete Carrill with Princeton. Tom said, Tom Green, when he talks to him, said we're never going to see a coach who have a run like that again here, and he's probably right, unfortunately. But it was nice for them to honor him. FDU is 2-1 in the NEC. They had a couple of wild games over the weekend. I want to mention Joel Emmanuel, their big man. He played 40 minutes and 47 minutes, 87 minutes over 2 games in 3 days as a forward. And the NEC is so wide open. I think FDU could maybe make a run there. It's early yet. We'll see. But nice of them to honor Tom Green. Let's talk about Rutgers. And obviously they've been on the ropes, 8-8, under the microscope for having so much talent with the 2 NBA-bound freshmen, and only to be 8-8 and really struggling in the league in the Big Ten at 1-4, having lost 3 straight, including 2 at home. Dylan Harper, has been hurt, obviously, sick. He's been ill. He's had a bad case of the flu. He caught a really bad strain of it. He also has asthma, which probably didn't help him dealing with the flu, right? The combination of things. So without him at full strength, you're just not going to beat Wisconsin and Purdue. Rutgers has other challenges too, but it's like taking a quarterback off your team. I mean, that's how important the point guard is, especially one like Dylan Harper, who's as good as he is and does as much as he is, Steve. So I do think like the number one order of business for Rutgers is getting him back, right? I mean, that's where it's at right now for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting him back, getting this team healthy, and let's face it, this is going to be an incredible challenge for Steve Pikiell here, right? Things have not gone how people thought they were going to go, and to hold this thing together and keep this team playing competitive, hopefully win some games over the next month and a half or so, it's going to take quite a coaching job, I think.
Yeah, and so I think we do expect Dylan to be more like himself against UCLA. He was maybe 20% of himself against Wisconsin, maybe 50% of himself against Purdue, which is red hot. UCLA comes in. I think you're going to see a 75 to 80% Dylan against UCLA tonight. UCLA comes in struggling, and they have to go across the country with this stupid realignment that has them in the Big Ten. They have to play at Maryland and Rutgers over a long weekend, which is absurd, of course, that they're in the same conference. And then Mick Cronin calls his team soft, which gains a ton of attention, right? Because of who Mick Cronin is and who UCLA is. And he's an old school type hard driving coach, Steve. So there's a lot of coaches who are very unhappy with the way things are going right now, partly because players maybe are not fully invested. That's the feeling I get.
Yeah, again, and I think some of the stuff King said, it applies to a lot of teams in New Jersey. It applies to teams across the country. And this is what, coaches are going to have to deal with now over the next 2 months or so.
Yeah, and I don't want to cast any shade on Rutgers players. I think they're good kids who are trying. I don't think this effort is the issue with them, okay? And they did out-rebound Purdue by a pretty wide margin in their game. But the issue with Rutgers is there's no time. There hasn't been time for Steve Pikiell to instill his culture, which is, he's like a slow cooker. He's going to do this over time. He took 2 or 3 years to get that one group up to speed. And boy, were they good when they got up to speed. The toughness, defense, culture hasn't been fully installed yet. There hasn't been time to install it. And I think that's part of the issue. And maybe, can you blame Steve for taking a chance with 2? He had a chance to get these 2 5-star one-and-dones, even though it's sort of out of character for the way he builds, only having these guys for a few months. You can't really blame him. But the sport is changing now too. So is there a way to hurry up this growth pattern, or do you have to get older, the right players out of the portal who have some of that already that you can build on? Like, that's a question Steve is going to have to address going forward. Obviously, he's got a season to coach first with some talented guys who could get hot, but like the resume for them, it's going to be an uphill climb from here on out for sure. Seton Hall's playing better offensively, Steve, and they did not play well defensively the last couple of games. It's like, they haven't been able to put it all together yet. We know there's some talent issues there, although, boy, Isaiah Coleman's gotten good, man. I don't know if you've seen them play lately, Steve. I know you try to watch them when you can. He is playing like an all Big East wing right now.
Yeah, and I think that's the nice takeaway for Seton Hall so far this season is the emergence of a player like that, a player who can be a first-team all-league guy, who can lead this team in the future, hopefully. Listen, again, we talked about this on the last podcast with Seton Hall. It's going to come down to them really digging in on defense here. And, they're giving up 90 points in some games. That's not a Shaheen Holloway team. I think that's where they really are going to have to dig in now.
And this will be a subject for later, but I want to just touch on it now. Like with Isaiah Coleman becoming the star, and he's only a sophomore, right? And look at the leap he's taken in year 2 under Shaheen Holloway. They got to keep this guy, Steve. They have to be mobilizing behind the scenes now. The athletic department has to be mobilizing behind the scenes now to do what they can to really try to keep him and not have him, poached the way Dre Davis and Kadary Richmond were poached, right? That has to be like number one priority for them. If they're gonna a Big East program, most of these teams in the Big East, not all of them, most of them keep their star players.
Well, I think that's it. I think that's the key now. Everyone talks about who you're going to get out of the portal. You got to keep your guys. That's got to be job one, is keeping your guys you want to keep.
Retention is huge. Kadary Richmond comes in. Speaking of players who left, he comes in on Saturday. Now, Seton Hall has a game at Butler, but like by the time we record our next podcast, that'll be passed. So, I mean, it'll be next week. So I want to just address Kadary Richmond coming in with St. John's. St. John's is really good. They're a top 25 team. Richmond's numbers are down. His role has been more of like an orchestrator than the guy, right? He hasn't really been the guy where he was the guy and his numbers were better and he was producing more at Seton Hall under Holloway. His role is smaller now. Sometimes they ask him to step up at the end of games, but St. John's has this balance where they're not asking him to do as much. So he's in a team situation that's very good. Is that good for his development? I don't know the answer to that. Certainly his numbers, his ability to showcase himself is down, but St. John's is pretty good.
Yeah, and I'm sure that was Pitino's, pitch to him is, you want to win? We're going to win, and this is what I need you to do for us to win. And, I think ultimately he has shown how good a player he can be offensively. I think just being on this team may be a good thing for him.
Well, and will it be good on Saturday when he comes in and the place and there's 10,000 people booing him? And I want to brings up a point. Like I heard Gary Cohen, our buddy Gary Cohen, say it's how weird it's going to be on Saturday when he gets booed, and you hate to see college athletes getting booed, but on the flip side, this part of professionalizing the sport, like as the sport professionalizes and players want to take money, to go places and be free agents, you're going to deal with professional level scrutiny, right? And that's a part of this. So Richmond is going to get booed. And I think we all know, Steve, everybody knows the line between booing someone and harassing them, right? And so no one wants to see Kadary Richmond harassed. But, like, can you blame Seton Hall fans for booing this guy for 2 hours on Saturday?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think there's different kinds of booing. This is something, listen, this guy was on your team and he's gone to the opponent. Yeah, I mean, listen, you're going to boo him,
Not just the opponent, Steve. Not just the opponent. Your biggest rival in the league across the river.
Right. So, yes, listen, I think it's fine to boo him. But, I mean, we see booing in different things now. And as you said, it's changed, right? NIL, there's a different feel. And so I don't think that's the case here, but you've seen it at games this year.
I think Seton Hall fans should have the green light to boo, not harass, but boo. And they know the difference, okay? But you mentioned the booing in different lights. And like I have heard now, you probably have not heard this, right? We're not hearing this at the mid-major level, but I have heard Rutgers and Seton Hall fans boo their own team this year. Not raining down boos like for an hour, but I've seen timeouts in both places, in the Rock and at the Rec, where there's been a timeout and the team's getting drummed and there's boos that come out. And like I've heard it multiple times. I've heard it twice in Newark and twice in Piscataway this season. And like I never really heard that with only a few exceptions. There have been a couple exceptions over the years, but we did not hear that. You might hear it once every couple of years in the past. Now it's becoming like a thing, fans booing their own teams. And it's a little uncomfortable feeling, Stephen. Like I personally would never, were I in those seats, I would never boo now, have I booed the bejesus out of the Jets, sitting in the upper deck in that horrendous franchise who I've given up on, by the way. I no longer have tickets, but have I booed the Jets? Yes. But would I boo a college team, my alma mater, if I was sitting in those seats, 18, 19-year-olds who are going to school? Probably, I don't think I would. I would not boo them. But I'm also not going to wag the finger at fans who are booing anymore when they've been asked to subsidize payroll basically with the NIL. Like I understand where the disconnect, is coming from. Like this is not Geo Baker and Caleb McConnell, who you've seen, Miles Powell, who you've seen grow up in the program for 4 years. These are strangers who come in seemingly as mercenaries. You're taking your money and not maybe giving effort or playing well or playing smart. That's going to foment boos, and it's a weird spot.
Absolutely. And listen, it's just a sign of the changing times of the game, and that's what we're having to deal with. That's what players are dealing with now.
Yeah, it makes me feel uncomfortable. There's a lot of things that make me feel uncomfortable, and we know from the coaches it's making them uncomfortable too. So we'll have to see, will revenue sharing solve some of this? That's a discussion for later on. But certainly King's comments, I think, like scratch the wound on this stuff, and it's good to talk about in our podcast. All right, so running down the horn real quick, Princeton opens Ivy League play with a win at Harvard. Princeton has Columbia in a showdown on Martin Luther King Day in Jadwin, Steve. Big game to set the tone for the Ivy League.
Yeah, and it's nice to see Columbia jumping up there. You know, there's probably like 4 teams that are really going to be scrapping for the Ivy League title. It's going to be very nice.
Yeah, Princeton's got Cade Pierce back. You knew the ankle injury wouldn't keep him out for long. The guy's just tough as nails. So maybe I'll make my way to Jadwin for that one. That's a good game. And then St. Peter's gets their first MAC win. They win at Canisius. Marcus Randolph is playing really well from Willingboro at guard, scores 19. And I think we're going to have him on soon as a guest on the podcast. Jersey guy leading a Jersey team. So the MAC, St. Peter's could be in the mix. They got to play better. I think Marist is the team to beat right there with our old friend John Dunn, former St. Peter's head coach, Seton Hall assistant. I think they're 5-0 or 4-0. They're off to a fast start.
Yeah, absolutely. And John Dunn is a terrific coach. I mean, I saw it firsthand when he was at St. Peter's.
Yeah.
Listen, you knew he was going to turn that thing around, and he's had some really good players leave since he's been there, and he's just developing more now.
Yeah, so good for him. Did a great job as Louis Orr's assistant at Seton Hall, chief strategist for some NCAA tournament teams. Took St. Peter's to the dance, which we know is not easy, and now Marist looking good early on. And then Ryder gets on the board, so good for them. They get a win in MAC play. And so we'll see. This is where we're at in the middle of it, Steve.
Hey, and I've got a Jersey jump shot shout out before we get out.
Oh, let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if anyone saw that St. Bonaventure LaSalle game the other night, but Deuce Jones, son of Mike Jones, who played at Rutgers, uncle Gary Jones was a star at LaSalle. St. Thomas Aquinas, college achieve, freshman at LaSalle, hits a 3-point off-balance banker in overtime to beat the Bonnies on the road for LaSalle. Incredible moment.
All right. We love it when, listen, we cover Jersey college basketball, but when New Jerseyans are playing good college hoops elsewhere, they get a shout out on Jersey Jump Shot. Good job, Steve. Thank you. And thank you for listening. Thanks to Prince Aligbe for coming on. And thank you, as always, for your support. We'll be watching hoops. You'll be watching, and we'll be back to talk it up on the Jersey Jump Shot.